That's a really good question.
You asked fantastic.
Yes, great question.
That's a great question, Ike.
Man, that's a good question, bro.
What's up, everybody? This is the Ikesinspirations podcast, and today I have a great guest named John. John is the owner and the creator of the great podcast Multifamily Insights, and I am honored to have him on. He has a lot of experience with podcasting and a lot of experience with multifamily investing, so I would love to learn from him and ask him questions on how we can become better people ourselves. So, John, can you do us a favor of introducing yourself to the audience and kind of providing a brief story of who you are?
Yeah, so listen, excited to be here. My name is John Casmon, based in Cincinnati, Ohio, but originally born and raised in Cleveland. And I'm a guy who started with a duplex, like many of your listeners, got intrigued by real estate, went through some challenges that got me really interested in it. But ultimately, I started with a duplex and slowly started to build my portfolio, ran into some issues and realized that, my strategy, it was a good start, but it wasn't going to help solve my real issues, which was trying to have enough money to pay my bills, financial freedom, some time flexibility. Buying duplexes wasn't going to get it done. So I needed a new strategy. I needed to learn how to work with other people and other people's money. I ended up hiring a mentor to teach me how to do that. And from that experience, ultimately ended up scaling a portfolio worth over $125 million.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's incredible. So what is the most pivotal decision you felt like you made in your career that has absolutely changed the outcome of your life?
I think the most pivotal decision I made was when I decided to hire my mentor. I think mentorship is really powerful, and a couple things happened. So one was I realized what I was doing was working a little bit, right? But it just wasn't fast enough. I needed help and I needed to scale. And what really happened was the company I was working for went into bankruptcy. And at that moment, I just had my second child. I was trying to figure out how to pay my bills. And like any real estate investor, you save money, buy a piece of property. But once you make that investment, you kind of are back broke, right? Like you got equity, but that cash is no longer sitting in the bank. So shortly after I bought that last property, which was an 8-unit building, I was kind of broke again, right? I had equity because I just made that down payment. And a 6-figure down payment, but then my company ended up folding and went into bankruptcy. So I was really stressed out. I mean, imagine, you just have a newborn baby.
Yeah.
You put the $100K plus you just been saving for last year into a new asset.
Yeah.
And you lose your job, right? So I was panicking. I was stressed out. I was trying to figure this out, and I think everybody can imagine or think about what it's like to lose your job, especially after you just made a big investment with new responsibilities. So at that moment, I really had to do some soul searching and figure out, okay, well, what can I do differently? And ultimately, I ended up realizing I need to work with other people. So it's not just my money, these deals scale and grow. And I need to find somebody who can help me do that. So that decision was pivotal for me because it kind of forced me to try a different strategy out of necessity as opposed to just doing it because it was a cool thing to do.
Okay, and can you talk more about that specific strategy change? You said you started implementing other people to make your dream come true and acquire more properties. Can you speak more in depth about that strategy?
Yeah, so I started really with multifamily, small multifamily, because it was accessible. I needed a place to live, and I think anybody should start with, a 2 to 4 unit, live in one of those units, rent out the other units. It's a great strategy. It's called house hacking, and it's exactly how I got started. Yeah. From there, you can scale and grow. The next property we bought was a 3-unit building. And that was our first pure real estate investment. So I felt great about that one because I wasn't living there. So it was a true investment. Then we bought that 8-unit that I mentioned earlier. And when I bought that 8-unit, I did it because I knew I wanted to scale. I wanted to get into commercial. I wanted to get more experience. But the thing is that, again, I kept running out of my own money, right?
Yes.
And when you're trying to buy real estate and you don't have money, it's kind of hard. It's like a fundamental aspect of real estate investing is having money, right? We otherwise you're just window shopping.
Yes.
So how do you get money, right?
Yes.
If you don't have your own money, figuring out how to get money is a key strategy. So that was absolutely critical for me to just say, okay, this is something I'm going to commit to. And let me back up, because the thing is that I was always aware that other people had money.
Yes.
But I was fearful of approaching other people about money, right? Because I didn't want to lose their money.
Yes.
Right. Who was I to get other people to invest with me? Like, I didn't feel like I had that much experience to be able to say, okay, hey, come invest with me. I'll take care of you and I'll get you these returns. There was a bit of an imposter syndrome, because again, I'd only had 2 or 3 deals at that point. So I didn't feel comfortable. And the most important thing is I didn't want to lose someone else's money. So when my company went through that bankruptcy, it forced me to look at those objections and say, you need to figure out a way to overcome this, because otherwise you're going to end up having to, either sell one of your properties to get this back, and that dream is just going to die, and you're just going to work until you're 65 years old. Yeah. And that was something that I couldn't come to grips with. So I knew someone who had gone down that path, who was raising a capital for deals, raising millions of dollars for deals. And that person mentioned to me that they had a coaching program, and this person ended up becoming one of the biggest real estate syndicators ever, with a $2 billion portfolio.
Wow.
So I got a little bit lucky. But on the same note, it's great to have a little bit of luck, right? Luck comes from taking action. Luck comes from taking steps in action. And from that experience, that allowed me to grow and scale my portfolio. And now I'm able to do the same thing, right? So he's not even really coaching anymore, but we have a coaching program. We now help other people get some of those same value and insights that, I was able to get when I was looking to make that leap.
Wow, man. You said so much there. I believe luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah.
So who is you to say was really lucky? It sounds like you prepared yourself to be in that and take advantage of that opportunity. But I honestly, everything you're saying is just very interesting, because I kind of have a similar. I feel like I'm in your position right now. Like, I'm a pharmacist, right? And I make substantially good income, but still like a wage, and it requires your time. And I own 2 properties, and I'm kind of like, you need capital to continue doing that. And that's kind of where I'm like, well, if I want to keep doing this consistently, like, I don't know, it's difficult with the lack of capital. So hearing you talk about having the courage to reach out to people is very, honestly, it's very refreshing, because I feel like I'm kind of currently in that process. I've reached out to you, simply to have you on the podcast. And I feel like it's kind of helping me change my mindset on how else I can continue to do more deals despite the lack of income.
Yeah. I'll say this to you, man. What was really powerful for me was actually when I got my first investment, because up until then, I always looked at it from my lens, right? Which was, okay, I bought that 8-unit building. Here's how much money I had to save $100,000+, me and my wife, to make this investment. I ended up deciding to work with other investors so I can raise maybe half the money. It's like, all right, let's take the property. I'll save 100, but I'll get somebody else who has 100, and now we can kind of scale twice as fast that way. And it wasn't until I actually found that next deal, which, by the way, was 192 units. So I went from 8 units to 192 units.
Wow.
We'll talk about that in a moment, too.
Wow.
When I got that 192 units, I raised some capital from some of the folks who were close to me, and I was excited. I was happy that they trusted me enough to invest with me. But when one of them said, thank you, it dawned on me a little bit. I stepped back because I was excited. I was wanting to thank them, and they thanked me. And I'll give this nugget to anyone who's raising capital or wants to be in this space. You have to recognize that what you're offering is a service. People are looking for these opportunities. And I was adding value to this individual, and that's why they were thanking me. Up until that point, I was so concerned with myself. You know, can I raise money? Do I know people who want to invest? Will they trust me? Do I know how to do this the right way? Do I have the right people around me who can help me make sure I don't make a mistake? I was so focused on me that I wasn't thinking that there are people out there who will not invest in real estate if they don't have someone like me, if not me specifically, presenting them with these opportunities. And it's selfish if you don't, right? Because you mentioned that you're a pharmacist, right?
Yes.
So Ike, you probably know a lot of other people who are just like you.
Yes.
Make really good money, you know, have worked hard for their career, and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I make this money last?
Yes.
How do I diversify my investments? How do I get out of the stock market? How do I take control over my, not just financial future, but my time, you know, my retirement age, all these different things. And if you're over here learning about real estate and building up your portfolio and doing all these things, and you're not sharing that with them, like that's going to hurt in 10 years when they're still there working and putting in 50, 60, 70 hours. And you're retired on a beach somewhere, right? You're like, oh, well, I invested in real estate. It's like, dude, how come you didn't tell me you were doing this or didn't give me a chance to partner with you, right? And I think about it like, picture being like Elon Musk's best friend, right? And this kid's in his 20s, right? He's telling you all these crazy, wacky ideas. And he goes out there and you know, becomes the richest man on the planet and never gave you a chance to invest or partner with him, right? You probably lose your hat, right? You're like, dude, like, how come you didn't ask me to partner with you, right? Or at least give me the chance to say no. Now, if I say no, that's on me, right?
Yeah.
If you give me the chance and I say no, that's on me. But if I never get the chance, I'm going to feel a certain way if you found a pathway to create real wealth, change your life, change the impact of so many people, and we're supposed to be friends, and I didn't even get an opportunity to partner with you on it. So there is a level of, it's not so much confidence, but I think we sometimes don't want to feel bad if things don't work out and put people in a bad situation.
Yes,
that's not. But we're cutting off someone else's ability to make a decision for themselves. And I look at it more from a standpoint of my job is to educate you about what I'm doing. I'm not trying to convince you to invest with me. I'm trying to educate you about what I'm doing, why I like it, what's working for me, what my approach is. And if you decide this is something that you want to try or you want to join me on one of my deals, great. But I'm not forcing anybody to invest, and I'm not even going to try to sell you or convince you to invest. But I do want you to be aware. I don't want this to be a little secret thing I'm doing, and then one day I just pop up and, you know, my life's different from what maybe you expected because I've been, you know, acting like a squirrel with my acorns over in the corner, not sharing what I'm doing. So there's an abundance mentality that comes, and I think you should share what you're doing with people and give them the chance to partner with you.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing that you're saying that, you know, because once you start to talk about the psychology of it and you confront yourself and you're like, why aren't you doing this? You know, and I think a lot of people have this same mentality. If I'm being honest, it feels like for me, it's like a selfish thing. Like I'm looking out for myself. But hearing you talk about it, you seem like you have a much more positive, healthy perspective of like, I'm really helping people. Like, you know, once you heard that thank you, it dawned on you that like you're truly serving and helping people. And I guess that's the more positive, productive frame of having instead of like, hey, I'm just taking other people's money, right?
Yeah, well, and I think it has to be that way. And that should be, quite frankly, one of your filters. Like, I don't think everyone should raise money, right? Some people absolutely should not raise money. You should stay far away from it. And part of that does come back to who you are at your core, your morals, your values. Like, if you're only in this to make money, you should not raise money, right? For me, I have gone through bankruptcies, right? I've gone through bankruptcies. I worked at General Motors when we went through bankruptcy. I worked at an advertising agency where, you know, almost in the, not the middle of the night, but that morning, right? In the middle of the day, we had, you know, the doors pretty much closed on us, like while I'm sitting in the office. So I've experienced that. I've seen my colleagues who were maybe a little bit older and had families and didn't have a plan B. I at least had my small real estate portfolio the second time around. The first time around, I had nothing, but it was just me. So I was like, oh, okay, I should probably make sure we got a backup plan. But then I realized my backup plan wasn't sufficient. So I think about those experiences. I think about the person who has dedicated themselves to a career, and whether it be by themselves, politics, health related, if that gets pulled away from you, what do you do next? So you have to come from a place of service. And because of that, I take all these investments seriously. When I'm making an investment, I'm putting money into these deals. I'm inviting my friends, my family members. I've had both friends and family invest with me. So this is something that I take very seriously. And because of that, I'm going to work a little bit harder to make sure that these deals are sound. And I know you kind of introduced me as a podcaster. Well, part of the reason I launched the podcast was to make sure I was doing what I can do to better myself. These individuals are looking up to me and looking to partner with me. I wanted to do everything I could to strengthen myself, again, starting with the mentor, but also having, a multitude of conversations so that I fully understood why deals succeed when they do, why deals fail when they do. And that makes me a better investor, right? So it has to come from a place of service and helping those people around you, not necessarily about just what you get out of it.
Yes. And everything you said is also why I created this podcast too, because I'm ultimately trying to learn more, gain more wisdom, and ultimately develop more relationships. I feel like podcasting is a very unique way to meet incredible people like yourself. I think it's a very underrated like the type of people I've been able to meet as a result of doing this is just mind-shattering. But it's interesting because people like to talk about themselves and their journey, but I feel like from the day-to-day process, that's not really a typical, like people don't just talk about this, like you don't get an hour just to talk about what you're truly passionate about. So I feel like when people get that invitation, people are excited to do it because you're not just kind of talking about your life story or things or stuff that you might have in your head constantly,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's it, right? We love to talk about ourselves. It's just a human nature thing. So podcasts are a great pathway to have these conversations.
Yeah. So you've done over 600 episodes of podcasting, which is incredibly impressive. What has doing so many podcast episodes taught you, one, about yourself, and two, about just multifamily investing in general?
Well, about myself, it's just kind of proven something I've known, which is a resiliency. Sometimes, people launch a podcast, they do it because they want to be the next Joe Rogan and they want to get 1 million downloads, or they want to raise $1 million off the show, right? Or they set these lofty goals. And if they don't achieve those goals, then they get frustrated and they quit the show, right? I'm sure you can go into the podcast graveyard and see a ton of shows that haven't released anything in years or never made it past, 10 or 20 episodes. For me, it really came down to, well, why am I doing this show?
Yes.
What value am I getting out of it? And how can I help my audience? Part of that is investing in myself. Every conversation, I learn something no matter who I'm talking to.
Yes.
Sometimes they reinforce something I already knew or position.
Yeah.
But I often get value out of that conversation because even if they're reinforcing it, okay, great. For instance, I'll give you a real one. When I launched the show, it was called Target Market Insights, and we started talking about how to find the best places to invest.
Yes.
After about 10 or 12 episodes, really by 20, I felt like I had answered that question, with the checklist and more of a, definitive, this is how you find it, right?
Yes.
We're 600 episodes in. I just had an episode that I don't think it's dropped yet. It's going to drop, I think, the next week or two. And this is a person after 600 episodes said, that one stat, which is population growth, not really that important for us. Wait a minute. Now I've interviewed 600 investors. Not a single one has said population growth wasn't important. Now, to be clear, some of them said, hey, it's not as important.
Sure.
This person, they kind of backwalked it, but the point was, it's not a key factor for them. And they go on to explain why it's not a key factor. And it just allows you to understand, like, there are parameters that people create, But then you also need to understand why the rules are the rules, and then how to break the rules, and when you can break the rules.
Yeah.
It's just the next level of mastery that comes, and having a platform where you can interview hundreds of successful investors, industry professionals, and pick their brain on nuanced conversations.
Yes.
It allows me to go much deeper than I could typically go, right? I used to listen to like bigger podcasts and other podcasts, and they're great podcasts when you're starting out. But after a while, you feel like you got the gist. And it's like, well, the inspiration is cool, but man, I really need some some tips to help me do this or that, right? So those conversations really are great to help you wrap your head around a thing or two like that. And even for me, when I talk about going from, my 8-unit commercial multifamily project and the next one being 192 unit, that never would have happened without podcasting.
Wow.
Both listening to podcasts as well as being a podcast host myself. Like literally, it would not have happened. So it's a huge way to make connections, powerful connections that can really impact the trajectory of your investments and also your life.
Yes. Yeah. I found myself that the more podcasts I do, the more knowledge I gain, and the more it kind of continues to affect my like decision making skills, and that I find incredibly invaluable. You mentioned that you've had so many podcasts with so many different individuals. You must have noticed a trend in what makes these people successful. I'm curious to hear, what do you believe is the number one most common attribute towards the success of these people?
Yeah, it's awesome you say that. One question I ask, I go through my round of insights, which is like a lightning round for most podcasts. So I call it the ROI, the round of insights at the end. And I ask the same series of questions. And one of the questions I ask is about a daily habit. The specific question is a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals. Everyone always has an answer, and a really good answer. What I have found for the most successful people, and first of all, we all define success for ourselves.
For sure.
I think some people get caught up on money or dollars or whatever, but success is based on the life you want to live.
For sure.
What I have found for the most successful people is they have a clear vision of what they want or how they define success. And then they take very clear steps towards those goals. They measure them, and they are unwavering on that journey. So one of the biggest differences between those people who are successful and those who are not, those people are not quit. They just give up flat out. They try something, doesn't work. They move on to something else or go back to where they were. I'll give you a real example. Think about how many real estate investors or people you've met. Do you go to meetups?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever been to a meetup, had a great conversation with somebody who was interested in investing? 2-3 months later, nothing. They're still showing up at the meetup, no progress. You don't see them for 2 to 3 months. Maybe they show up again 6 months later, but they haven't done anything, right? They're still trying to figure it out, right? What happens is those people are interested but not committed. And those successful people, if you show up, I'm going to give you a guarantee. If you show up to a real estate meetup every single month for a year, I'm not going to guarantee that you'll have a property, but I guarantee you'll be much closer to investing, and you will have the knowledge and the confidence. And it may just be a numbers thing.
Yes.
But you're going to be right there to get a property. You're going to be committed. You will be an investor, right? Maybe not in that 12 months, but I promise you show up for 12 months straight, you're going to get a property.
Yes.
Because you're demonstrating that level of commitment in the effort and showing up and being present. Yes. And that's the thing that so many people don't have. They're impatient, and if it doesn't go their way, they drop out. The other thing, if I can add a second,
please,
is they are when you are resilient and you keep showing up. The other side of that coin is taking the actual feedback and making an adjustment. it's not just trying to do the exact same thing the exact same way over and over and over and over. It's to say, man, you know what? I've been trying to do it this way for 4 months now. Don't seem to be getting any traction. Let me go get some feedback. And this goes back to the mentorship, right? And why mentors are so important, because if you're trying something and it's not working, now you can go to a mentor and say, hey, I'm trying this. And they might say, hey, well, yeah, I wasted a year doing that. Don't do it that way. Do it this way. Or they can give you a blueprint to say, hey, follow these steps. And then if you're not getting the result, we can identify what's going wrong, right? And it helps to save time to have that vision or that pathway where you can get that feedback, you can make little adjustments, and those little adjustments can be the difference between winning a deal or winning an opportunity and losing. I'll give you an example of one of my clients, right? So I had a client, and he does a great job of, staying on top of brokers, underwriting deals, and trying to look for opportunities. But he was making a mistake, and one of the mistakes he was making was when a deal didn't work, he just would stop. He underwrote it. Broker wants $5 million. He doesn't think it's worth more than 3.5. So he doesn't submit an offer. He just moves on. And I gave him feedback to say, listen, if you are doing this work, I want you to still submit that LOI. Okay? Submit that LOI at 3.5. Or, so you can do either or. Or you reach out to that broker and you say, hey, thanks for sending me this deal and going over the questions I had. I'm coming in much lower, or the deal doesn't work for XYZ reason. And then asking, do you have anything else that fits my deal criteria? And here's the reason why.
Okay.
That broker's job is to broker a deal, right? If they don't hear from you, they don't know if you just fell off the planet because you're not serious.
Yes.
They don't know if you found another deal. They don't even know if you looked at the deal. So if you can give them feedback and say, hey, this doesn't work for us because of X, Y, Z, one, you might be wrong, or maybe there was an assumption off, or maybe there was something that they didn't communicate clearly. So now there's a chance for them to clarify, oh, no, actually, it's this. Or you know what? Maybe you missed this, or did you check that out? Did you miss this comp? Or it could even be something to the effect of, the broker knows it, but that owner told them, I'm only selling for $5 million. And the broker's trying to tell them, hey, man, look, it's worth $3.5 million. But the owner said, I don't care, I want 5. So now when they get that feedback from you, they're armed with information. They can go to the seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller, we got this feedback and these offers. This is where we're at. Would you consider lowering the price now? So it's valuable for them, right? So that's one thing, is that you just always want to have that feedback.
Yes.
And that for him was a difference, because it didn't change that particular deal, but that broker now knows that he's dealing with a serious investor. So the next time he can reach out to him and say, hey, I know that one didn't work. What about this one? So having that, again, coach, that mentor, somebody who can actually look at whatever it is you're doing and then break down like, hey, okay, what do you do? What did you try? What did you hear back? Oh, that's where you're making a mistake. That's where you need to adjust. That's critical. And you can play around and try to figure this out by yourself if you want to. But if you're talking about millions of dollars, and particularly if you're talking about other people's money, I wouldn't play around. It's other people on your team that can help guide you through this process.
For sure. Man, you just gave an incredible amount of gems. One of the first things that I want to comment on is you spoke to people's commitment, that, and just showing up. And it's for me personally, it's one of the biggest reasons I'm doing this podcast. Everything I'm doing about this podcast is more for an internal sense of motivation. And I'm actually practicing the ability of showing up for myself. I'm practicing the ability of being consistent, just like you have done for over 600 episodes. It's not about the money. It's not about whatever, like the external metrics, or if it gets millions of views, although I do hope one day it can get there. It's really about practicing and becoming consistent in an endeavor and reinforcing that behavior so I can do it throughout other aspects of my life, whether that be real estate investing, whether that be pharmacy, whether that be podcasting. I want to make that an attribute of who I am. So hearing you talk about that it's been incredibly validating to see, like you said, the biggest attribute is commitment. I absolutely love that. The next thing you also mentioned to me that was very interesting is communication. So one of my favorite quotes is "Communication can save a nation," and it sounds like you talk about that a lot. The importance of communicating with people and making it clear what your vision is. But then sometimes what makes that difficult is sometimes you yourself aren't even clear about what your vision is. And I'm kind of learning that the more you speak to people, the more you need to be specific about what you want, right? Yeah. So, John, my next question to you is, you asked this question to hundreds of people. My question to you is, what daily habit do you do that keeps you staying focused?
Yeah, man, I love that. There are a few things, right? So you got to have that commitment to yourself. There are some things that are truly daily habits that I do every day or most days. And there are some things that are more kind of like weekly habits, but always enjoy doing or they help me. The first daily habit is I try to get a win every day. First thing for me, that's working out. So most days I'm up early, go to the gym. Usually I'm there about 5:30 or so, get my workout in. And that allows me to start the day with the energy, with great, with the win on the table, eating healthy, making sure that I'm, planning out my meals and understand when I'm going to have time to eat or what I'm eating. That helps tremendously. And then one thing that I don't do as consistently, but I think is a really great practice when I do do it is, it just comes down to, writing out kind of my vision and my mantra. So I have a mantra that I write, like I said, most days, not every day, but just writing out who I am. There's a great book called Atomic Habits, which is
by James Clear. Yeah.
Phenomenal book, phenomenal read. And the point that he gets into is to make these shifts in who we want to be or develop the proper habits is we have to see ourselves as the person we want to become.
Yes.
So if you want to be in shape, well, what does a person in shape do? What would they eat? Would they go work out or would they, grab some chips and watch TV, right?
Yeah.
If you want to be a billionaire real estate investor, even a successful real estate investor, you need to probably invest in real estate. You need to underwrite deals. You need to talk to investors. You need to reach out to brokers, right? So it starts to frame this thing up and it allows you to take the right steps and the right actions.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. And I'm curious to learn because you've done so many podcast episodes. As a result of speaking to so many different people, what kind of relationships have you been able to foster, and how has that played a role in your life? Like, how has that benefited you?
I've been fortunate to make a lot of great connections, and I've been blessed to allow them to happen organically. I think some people, they go into a conversation with an expectation, right? Yeah. They're like, oh, I want to get this guy to invest with me, or I want this person to do business with me, right? And I think that's just disingenuous, and it kind of it hurts the ability to form really good relationships with folks. So I just try to go into a conversation and get to know somebody and have a great chat, and if something connects, then we can follow up offline. But I've been fortunate, man. I would say my podcast launched as great for me as I could have ever asked. My very first episode was with a guy who ended up becoming a broker on a property I sold here locally. But it was critical because the whole premise of the show when I first started was finding the best places to invest. And I didn't think people would actually share their secrets with me. and he was a broker, right? And, when I was starting out, brokers would just sell whatever area the property was in, right? So on the west side of town, the west side's great, man. We got a lot of investment going on over here. And when you don't live in an area, you kind of just get sold this, right? I'm like, the east side's great, man. It's very stable. We got this. So I'm like, any part of the city, they're gonna shine it up and make it feel like a great place.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
So this was my chance to say, all right, you don't have an agenda, right? There's no deal you're trying to sell me. Tell me about the best place to invest in this market. And he's like, all right, I would start right here because of this. And I'm like, oh, this dude actually answered it? So that was my map. So I literally took what he gave me and I said, I'm shopping for my next property in this corridor that he just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a 28 unit in that corridor, and I bought it with confidence because he told me flat out, like, this is a part of the city that's growing and developing. So that was episode 1, right? Episode 2, I mentioned going from 8 units to 192 units.
Yeah.
My partner on that 192 unit, episode 2, right? His partner, episode 7, my mentor, episode 8. So the broker who did the loan, the mortgage for that 28 units, episode 3. You understand? So like, I had a crazy, but now in fairness, when I invited these individuals onto the show, I was hoping to build and strengthen relationships with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I first started out, I got the power of, having a podcast. Now, they all didn't happen immediately, but my point is, I was able to strengthen those relationships for sure. I can go back to the first 10 episodes, and like, at least half of them are people I still talk to today, that are on my phone. We text. I saw one just the other day. So these are people that I have built really strong relationships with, out of, now again, there's 600 episodes, so not everybody, but, but absolutely starting out. I mean, some of those early episodes are some of the people I'm closest to in this industry.
That's awesome to hear. And, my follow-up question to that is, sometimes people, we often hear the power of networking and relationship building, but sometimes it kind of can be a little bit vague. How do you go about maintaining and fostering a successful long-term relationship so that people feel comfortable, like, doing whatever, whether it's a transaction or meeting? How do you foster that, or kind of follow up after that first conversation? Or do you feel the need to follow up? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you definitely want to have the doors open to follow up on that relationship, right? If there's an opportunity to create something or to talk more or to, just explore what the possibilities are. I think that it's important to have that door open. What we try to do and what we teach our clients who are, in our one-on-one coaching and kind of our group mastermind members is you want to start to create a system and a process for that. Mm-hmm. So create a system and a process, leverage automations as much as you can. Now, this doesn't mean that, hey, it's false or inauthentic. Like, it's just a reminder. Like, I don't know about you, man, but I go to events or conferences and I might have a great conversation with somebody, and they might give me their business card, and you leave with a stack of business cards, and then a month later you're like, man, who's that guy I was talking to at that what event? What was his name again? Like, oh man, like, what's his email? And man, do I apply that card? Right? And it happens, right? And it's not that you didn't intend to follow up with that person or stay connected with that person, but going back to Atomic Habits, we fall to the level of our systems, right? So if you don't have a system in place for taking a relationship or a conversation and being intentional about how you stay connected to these individuals, then it will just be a conversation. And again, you can't do this with every single person that you've ever met.
For sure.
But there are certainly some where you say, okay, hey, I want to make sure that I follow up this person. We want to make sure that you have the right system and process so you can do that.
Interesting. So essentially you have a system that allows you to foster and stay in contact with people. What would you say to people who will be like, man, you're systemizing this, or like you're automating this? Like, we're not robots. Like, this is, we're humans. Why do you feel the need to automate something that isn't really, doesn't feel human? What would your response be to that? Because I could see some people saying like, that doesn't feel like a genuine way of connecting.
Yeah, well, you got to separate the two things though, right? So the connection has to be authentic. The connection has to be an authentic connection. What I'm trying to automate is the process of the triggers for the follow-ups. Okay. Right? So it's not, and I think that's a great question, because so many people mess this up, and I'll give you the wrong way to do it, right? I'm sure you've seen this too. You go to a meetup and some dude, or a conference, and some dude is just handing out their business card, right? Yep. I've been to an event where the guy didn't even talk to me. He wasn't even in our circle, right? He just walked up and literally handed out his business card and walked away. Didn't say hello. Most people at least say, hey, I'm such and such.
You don't even know your objective.
Yeah, I'm a mortgage needs. If you need a lender, here's my card, right? Which I don't like. That's terrible. Yeah. But this guy didn't even talk to me. He just handed his card. Okay. Like, that's his process, right? It's I'm going to gunshot this thing, right? I'm going to blast this. And I'm going to, I say shotgun this thing, right? But that's his process. I'm just going to pass out 1,000 cards and maybe 2 people will call me.
Mm-hmm.
That's inauthentic. That's robotic. That's not the way we want you to do it, right? What I'm talking about is building the authentic connections, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having the authentic relationships, but then you creating a system or process. And even when I say automations, that automation could be an alarm on your phone, right?
Yes.
It could be a calendar. So we have more sophisticated automations, but what I'm saying is you need to create a process that allows you to recall these things or progress those conversations forward. We all eat, right? We're humans. We eat when we're hungry, right? We have a system and process. Now, sometimes it's chaotic. Our stomach starts to growl. We just go in there and grab whatever, right? But if I want to eat healthy, I had to step back and reverse engineer everything. I used to just be a guy who I'd run out and grab McDonald's and call it a day. And yeah, I know it's not that good for you, but whatever. Well, whatever, right? But when you stop being that young dude, that stuff starts to catch up to you, right? And you're like, ooh, okay, I really need to start eating better, right? Or you're working out and you're trying to be healthy. Well, I had to reverse engineer that entire process. And I realized, well, what are my triggers? When do I get hungry? When do I just say, you know what, I'm eating whatever because I'm starving right now and I don't care, right? So I had to reverse engineer that, create a system where now I have those options built in. I normally meal prep. If I get hungry, I could go in the kitchen and I can pop something in and I can be eating in 2 minutes, right? I have snacks that are healthy snacks, but this requires planning. I have to go to the grocery store. I have to meal prep. I have to cook. I have to do this, right? So you have to understand that system, because if not, you're going to default to whatever you've been doing. And if you're comfortable with where you're at and what you've been doing, you don't have to have a system. But if you want something new, if you want to grow, you want to build connections that can impact your life, you want to have relationships that can help you thrive and succeed, you want to grow a business, you want to create investments, you want more passive income, you have to be intentional about it. And intentional means having a system and a process that allows you to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, man, that's great. It makes me think about how I can be more intentional about the relationships I have. One thing I do, it's very small, but every Sunday I make it a goal to contact 2 friends, just to maintain that friendship and let them know that I appreciate them. And I do it on a Google Calendar to set the trigger to remind me. But now it has me thinking about how I can do that on a more professional level and with other people who I like to connect with. So, thank you for sharing that wisdom with me. I really appreciate it. Another question that I would love to ask is, out of all the people you've had on your podcast, what was your favorite episode or guest and why?
Man, you can't ask me that question, man. Come on.
Oh, really?
That's a tough one, man. I mean, over 600 episodes, there are a lot to choose from. I will tell you this, there's definitely a handful that, and I'm going to say more the conversation, the guests, there's too many great guests to pick a guest. But there are conversations that hit differently based on where you're at, right? Maybe a challenge you're going through at a certain time, maybe something that you're trying to accomplish. Yeah. I remember that first one hit hard just because that was my very first interview and I didn't know what this show was going to be. Like, I had this vision in my head, but I scripted out. It's like, I think it's the only interview I've ever scripted out. So I had it scripted out. I had all my questions scripted out, what I was going to ask. Yeah. And it went much better than I could have anticipated. So that's one that definitely stood out. Interviewing my mentor the first time was really great just because I got a chance to, even though I could talk to him, it was just different interviewing him, So I thought that was kind of cool and ask questions that maybe wouldn't come up in our normal sessions. So that was cool. And, there was a conversation I had with a guy. What's John's last name? It's going to hit me in a second. I see his face. But John, it's episode 141. John D. Saunders. I really enjoyed that chat. John builds websites. His company is 54 Digital. and he builds websites. We just had a great conversation, less about building websites and more about SOPs, standard operating procedures.
Okay.
The reason this was so powerful for me was this is a guy who had a relatively small business, but he was all about SOPs, documenting everything you do, how to do it, how to offset that, how to give it to somebody else. And I just thought that was really cool, the way he thought about his business. It helped me retool some things and the way we approached it. So that was a cool conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it sounds like a common theme in like what you value is systems and creating systems. And yeah.
You know what? Well, the thing about it is, if you want to scale and grow, it can't just be you.
Sure.
You have to be able to offload some of that work. And starting out, I did everything with the podcast. I very quickly realized if I was going to be the person editing these podcasts, no one would ever hear these podcasts. So that was the very first thing. But then it was a quality control, where I was still the executive producer, and so I was like, okay, I need to teach somebody else how to do this, because I was staying up till like 2-3 in the morning.
Wow.
Trying to get a podcast episode out. And I'm like, I got work in the morning. I got 2 little kids. I got 2 flip projects going on, trying to raise them. So I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And I hired somebody. They took a little bit off my plate. Somebody else took a little bit off my plate. But then I did quality control. I did lay out the structure. Hey, I don't like the way you're doing that. I want it done this way. Or here's how I do this the right way. So that's going to make your life much easier. And, I just had a great conversation with someone yesterday, interview. And in the interview, she works with institutional level investors who are looking to park at least $10 million into a deal. She said their minimum check is $20 million, and ideally they're writing $50 to $100 million checks. So I asked her, I said, when you're looking to invest $50 million to $100 million into a deal or to an operator, what are you looking for? Her answer was she's looking for operators that have great systems and great processes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to build any business, it really does come down to systems and processes.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned how you're doing this podcast, and in order to make it sustainable, you need like a great team. I just started doing this podcast, but I hired a virtual assistant to help me give myself more time. She's the one who helps me find the guests. She's the one who helps me market the content. And she's the one who kind of makes this process more sustainable. And I just want to give a shout out to her, because I'm very grateful for the work she does for me. But it also makes me think, how can I systemize other activities that I'm trying to do, And so one of the things I also wanted to ask you about is I don't know if you remember this because you did so many podcasts, but I watched your podcast with Brad Smotherman. It was about off-market deals and how, and I recently watched that, and I really enjoyed it. And one of the reasons why I was looking into that podcast is because I'm currently in the process of looking for off-market deals. I've typically gotten my deals from the MLS, but I feel like typically on the MLS, you find like either good or slightly above average deals. I don't feel like you find great deals in the MLS. So I'm trying to learn how to find better deals through off market. And so I watched your podcast to gain that knowledge. But now that I'm speaking to you directly, and you have so much experience in multifamily investing, in your experience, what is some of the most effective ways to actually find off market deals?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Timeless question. How do you find off market deals? First and foremost, I think you have to flip that a little. So most of the time people are thinking about finding off-market deals. In our world, in commercial real estate with larger apartments, it's less about it being an off-market deal. I mean, there's little technicalities around that. I think the real key is finding a problem that you can solve.
Okay.
So if you want to, and you can do this for smaller properties too, but when I'm looking for an off-market deal, we're trying to make sure we understand the story. What's going on at the property? What's the problem that you can solve? If you can figure that out, then it gives you more of a chance to solve it. Now, here's the deal. You're talking about high-stakes negotiations and conversations. So I'll go back to having a system and a process. where
Nice.
one, you can identify that problem, you know what a problem is that you should be looking for. So that's the first thing. Two is understanding how to structure a deal or an offer for that owner that solves their problem, but also allows you to have, kind of the most upside. And then last is going to be how to put it all together and close that project. You mentioned Brad Smotherman, which was a great interview. I actually just did a mastermind workshop. So we bring in expert trainers in our mastermind sessions, and we brought an expert trainer to talk about how to find off market deals and specifically how to negotiate. So he kind of laid out his framework of negotiating for off market deals. And one of the main things he hit on, I'm trying to remember the whole conversation, but one of the things he hit on was recognizing that, when you're negotiating with someone else, price cannot be the main focal point. Okay. If you're fixated on price or if they're fixated on price, you're not going to win.
For sure.
You have to figure out what that other trigger is for them.
The motivation.
We call it a motivated seller, but what is that motivation? And if it's price, you're not going to get a good deal, period, right? It's got to be something else. It's got to be, taxes, death. It got to be, there's an issue with the property. Could be a property that was inherited. It could be something where, it's vacant or tenants aren't paying rent. But if you can figure out that problem,
sure,
now you have leverage. But they still need a dollar amount. They're going to push for that dollar amount.
For sure.
Your job is to shift that conversation
to the problem
where you can negotiate the problem, solve that problem, and then get it at a price that works for you. So we actually have that recorded. It's in our content library.
Cool.
So we have all that available. But yeah, I mean, you just have great conversations like that because to your point, I know a little bit about that, but you can't be the expert at everything.
Yeah.
So one of the things I like to do is bring on those experts. Like that's his thing, man. He's done hundreds of transactions for himself. He's helped others with thousands of transactions like that. So he actually just came and we brought him on board to say, hey, just talk to us about this. We had an hour with him to go into, how to do it. He has a whole framework that he gave us. So we have that framework in our content library as well. So you can follow that whenever you're talking to a potential off-market deal.
And just what's his name and where can I find it? Because I'm kind of currently going through that process right now. If you don't mind.
Yeah, let me see here. Sorry.
No, take your time, man.
So his name's Tom Zeeb. So Tom Zeeb, and then what I just described, that's available in our mastermind. So that's kind of available in our membership there. But he had some great, and we did an interview with him as well, so we can see the link to the interview.
Yeah, I would love to.
But Tom did that, and like I said, we sit down we try to every month we bring somebody new on that just helps us with everything from underwriting to, again, SEC structures, deal structures, things to look out for when you're doing your own deals. Raising capital, leveraging social media, underwriting. We try to tap everything you would need if you're going to be in this space working with other investors.
Yeah, no, Tom Zeed, awesome. I would definitely look into him. Sounds like a great resource. I currently, you're talking about systems and processes, and I'm also have been in a phase of my life where I'm really focusing on that. Just like I hired a virtual assistant for the podcast, I hired a virtual assistant to actually help me find off-market deals. And, I'm asking you these questions so I can kind of understand how I can target these people, you know what I'm saying, and find the people who may have problems or situations I could potentially help with, So I'll definitely look into Tom Zeed and see if I can learn from him. The next question I have for you is, you've been doing multifamily investing for years, and I'm just curious, John, why are you so invested in multifamily investing, And what is the ultimate goal behind doing all of this? You know, because you're fairly wealthy. I don't know. I don't think you're doing this for the money anymore. Why continue to do this? You know.
Well, it comes back to service, first of all, right? So if you're trying to help other people, you're trying to help yourself. There's generational wealth. There's all these different things. But one of the main reasons that, I got into it and wanted to push is, people need to see folks that look like them in this space. And it's one thing to build your own personal portfolio, and that's great, phenomenal, right? But to inspire or share with other people so that they can go out and do the same, I think is more powerful. So that's something that's really important to me, is just helping people see somebody who looks like them. I come from corporate America, so I have that background. But I also went to a state school. I didn't go to Yale or something super fancy, right? So I went to the state college. I'm a public school kid, and I'm able to go out there and raise millions for deals. And I wanted people to understand that this is possible. The other thing for us is I enjoy what I do. I enjoy helping others learn this business or partner with us on this business. And it's something I hope to do until I take my last breath. So, real estate's been a very powerful tool for us. It's something I hope my kids get into as well, but something that we enjoy and we want to keep doing it.
Yeah. I think that's a great answer. I do think it's good to see people like you and I doing this. I feel like at least for me, I like to see Africans and African Americans prosper, and honestly, it's very inspiring to me. I feel like I don't see enough of that, and so when I see people like you empower and empowering others, it really is inspiring, and it makes me be like, man, if he can do it, I don't know what's stopping me from doing this.
Absolutely, man. I love that.
Yeah. So my last question, man, is it's been a blast speaking with you. Wealth of information that I'm definitely gonna go and look back on this podcast. But my last question is for you is, if people are interested in learning more about you or following you, how can people find you, and is there anything you would like to promote?
Yeah, we've mentioned I think the coaching and the mastermind. That's probably the easiest thing, right? If you're interested in learning how to do this, our mastermind, as of right now, is only $89 a month, so it's very cheap and very affordable. That price is going to go up this summer, so it just depends on when you're hearing this. But that's one. Really, we have a lot of information on our website. We got our podcast there. We have articles there. We have the information on the mastermind program there as well. So you can go to championsadjust.com and learn more about what we have to offer. We also have a sample deal package, so you can check that out on our website as well. So just go to championsadjust.com.
Gotcha. Well, John, it's been it's been a great pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, and thank you for sharing your story and the knowledge you have. It's really been valuable. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time today.
Man. Thank you.